Hello, everybody, and this is Dave and Paul, and this is the 16th episode of An Englishman, an Irishman, and a load of bollocks. So, Paul is actually on holiday at the moment. Paul, I gather you're in Spain, aren't you?
Yeah, hola or whatever to say here.
Hola,
Yeah,
¿qué tal?
is that it? Yeah, I'm one of those annoying people that go on holiday. I don't make any effort to
Ah, what?
language, and the kids do. The kids are great. They're saying all the language and all the thank yous and loads, and I'm just grumpy in the background going, "Hello, bye."
Ah, well, the kids are making
Yeah,
an effort. That's the main thing, isn't it?
they're making
Yep, are
efforts.
you all having a good time there?
Having a wonderful time. Yeah, we're in Fungarola, Costa del Sol. We've been here since Saturday. And yeah, we're having a wonderful time. It's glorious sunshine, clear blue skies, mid to late teens, weather-wise, degrees-wise. Just we're just pottering around.
Yeah,
We're having our summer holidays in winter.
yeah.
Today's the first day of spring, because my wife is due a baby in the summer. So we said, just why not? Let's go abroad for a week. And as I said, we're just pottering around, lazy days. Today was a wonderful day. We strolled around the promenade, loads of ice cream, loads of playgrounds. There's loads of lovely green areas, which is very noticeable around here. Loads of lovely parks and beautiful playgrounds. And we went to Malaga yesterday. I don't know, have you ever been to Malaga? Beautiful city.
I have, Paul. Yeah, yeah, I have been. It's a lovely place. Yeah, yeah. I was going to
Yeah,
ask you actually. Obviously with you being in Spain, and I know first time for a number of years you've been, but just some based on your trip so far, some cultural observations about Spain. Really, anything at all to comment about life in Spain in 2023.
you lived here for a few years, so it'll be interesting to hear your uh, take on Spain. Uh, the first thing, look, I noticed, look, a lot of British and Irish people go to Spain for holidays, and one thing I did notice, which was we came on Saturdays, we were here on Sunday, and we noticed everything is shut on a Sunday.
Mhm.
Shops, even the larger supermarkets, are closed, and it's very much a family orientated day. We noticed a lot of families. We walked by a church, and there was young families coming out of mass, and it was like a blast from the past. Of Ireland used to be like that. There was a time when I was growing up that everything was shut on a Sunday, and it was for both religious reasons and also to give people who own shops and supermarkets a day off to spend with their family, and you have your roast dinner on a Sunday, and you don't go anywhere, only maybe visiting your relatives. And now that those days are gone, and now it's all spending your Sundays in shopping centres and eating takeaways and all Americanized food. Anyway, maybe I'm being a bit over the top there, but I did notice there was a lot of families having Sunday lunch together. So that's one observation. Another observation that I did notice that COVID is still showing its ugly head. Unfortunately, you mentioned 2023.
Is it still
It's
knocking
still
about in
there,
Spain? Is it? Yeah.
still knocking around. Yeah, it's like it's squeezing the COVID lemon. It's like squeezing that lemon. They're just trying
Those
that bit
Spanish
harder.
lemons.
The Spanish lemon, yeah, they're squeezing that bit more. I mean, it does. It's still showing its ugly head. I didn't know until before I came here that Spain is the last country, one of the last countries in Europe, definitely the EU, which still has the mask is mandatory on public transport, right? I mean, doesn't bother me, didn't bother me. And we noticed it was about 90 to 95% of people on the trains wearing masks. And to be fair to the people, no one said anything to us. We weren't wearing it. No one rolled their eyes.
Yeah.
Um, but we did, there was a security guard that came on yesterday on the train. We were coming back from Malaga. And he came on, and I noticed people who weren't wearing the mask just whipped one out and started putting it on. And I was kind of like, what the hell is going on here? And he came over to me and he said, "Oh, it's Spanish law. You have to wear the mask." So I did my kind of my manual impression of Faulty Towers. I was like, "I know nothing, you know."
Yeah.
Okay, I was kind of, in these situations, Dave, you're polite and you
Yeah.
play kind of the stupid tourist, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
COVID.
okay,
Okay. Okay.
okay, yeah." Where's Basil when you want him? And yeah, he again, that's one thing that we'll talk about regarding COVID that we've talked about in the past is it does reveal people's inner Nazis, inner Nazi. People love the power, the control. And he stood over me. And look, he was polite up to a point. Now, again, as we said, they're getting rid of the mask mandate over here next week. So it's flogging a dead horse at this stage, which again shows the ludicrous of it. Like COVID has a timer. It stopped next week. So I just said, oh, sorry, I don't have one, but I thank you for telling me. I was polite. So then he said to me, do this, cover your mouth. And I was like, what? I'm not going to cover my mouth. And then he said, he kind of got me, and he said, do this. And I was like, I'm going to be on the train for the next half an hour. I'm not going to do this. There was an English tourist looking on, an older gent, and he just whipped out a tissue, and he put the tissue over his head. And as soon as the security guard went, he just put the tissue in his pocket. He winked over at me as if to go, this is bollocks, isn't it? You know. So it's always there, isn't it? COVID, and the masks are, as I've always said, they're dehumanizing, they're degrading to wear, and they're cheap to see. But again, it was just shows, you know, we don't want to get too political, but I think I said to you this off camera that I'm just thinking that security guard that during Franco's time, his grandparents would have been proud of him, you know.
Yeah.
He's getting a little kick out of the power of control, albeit he was polite up to a point. But this following orders, you know, it's there, everywhere.
Yeah, interesting. And you touched it because Spain was under Franco until mid-70s, was it? You know, it was a dictatorship. I don't know. I don't profess to know loads about the history of Spain. I'm not gonna say that, but I do know it's interesting, and we've talked in previous videos, haven't we? How the stereotypes about various different countries, that there seems to be more of a grain of truth in all of those stereotypes in all of those countries, because those kind of like patterns of societal behavior have really revealed themselves since the advent of the COVID bollocks. We talked about, we talked about Australia going back to being basically a prison camp. We talked about Ireland being very, very subservient. We talked about how the English kind of like rose up first. We talked about how the French really, really didn't want to put up with any nonsense from their government, and they really took it to them. And Spain, I remember when it all first kicked off, and Spain was one of the first countries that was, affected by whatever it was, allegedly. But they went very hard, very early with the This is even before any of the jobs came online. I remember
wearing masks. You had to wear masks outside. Which again is just ludicrous and absurd.
Absolutely. And having spent some time in Spain, and I love Spain. I absolutely love Spain, but there appears to be, maybe deep within the Spanish psyche, this obeying of orders, this reversion back to fascistic ways of operating society. And obviously, with you being there now and seeing that, 90 odd percent of people think now, no, it's all a load of bollocks. It's always been a load of bollocks. You still got 95% of people complying, putting these stupid, dehumanizing, pieces of cloth over the face. That's disappointing, really. And it's just interesting how, that's still a situation in Spain, a country that I absolutely love.
They're actually getting rid of it. Apparently, the mask mandate on public transport on, I think it's the 7th of February next week, and and I was only reading about it last night. It's €100 fine on the spot if you don't wear a mask. So again, to be fair to him, he could have been he didn't go full fascist with his jackboots and his goose stepping on the train, because he could have fined me and Lisa on the spot, and he didn't. You could see he was a bit tired. As I said, it's near the end. But that just shows the craziness of it, that they're given a week. And then next week on the trains, there'll be no one wearing it. And then the other absurd thing is that you can wear it at the train. You don't have to wear a mask on the train station platform. But as soon as you step into the train, everyone has it on. So again, look, I know we've covered this COVID and masks, but it is, like, I've never worn a mask. So again, to see it 95% on the train. You know, I don't get angry looking at it. I just feel, there's a sense of just, it's humorous at this stage,
Yeah.
you know.
It's
And again,
humorous.
seeing different cultures, nationalities, you know, and how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when they brought the mask mandate in England. I think it was the 27th of July, 2020, and I just went into a state of absolute abject horror at both the mandate itself, but then the wholesale acceptance and embracing of it. And I used to say to people, I'd rather take a fucking bullet than ever wear a mask. And I mean that. And it was the same with locking down. It was the same for going for tests, and it was the same for the jab. And to think that there's a situation still so far into this now where you've still got people complying en masse
Yeah.
simply for the sake of it now, simply just complying for compliance sake is absolutely ludicrous and crazy.
The masks, for me, the masks was always the obedience test. It was the tester. The early days, it was a tester to gauge governments, and again, the nudge units, the Susan Michis, and all the different tyrannical figures pushing this narrative. The mask was the first test. Now, when we failed that obedience test with flying colours, thankfully. But the majority of the public, they wore the mask without questioning things, and they thought that would be it. We just have to wear it for a few weeks. And again, it didn't happen like that. So again, it was the tester to gauge what public feel around it was. And then that led to the slave passports. Then that led to the vaccines. So for me, the masks, it was just, it highlighted submissiveness, conditioning. It was dehumanizing. And again, it also showed that I'm thinking of the security guard on the train, like yesterday. As I said, he was polite. I was polite about it. You know, we were as adult as we could be. But I'm thinking, I'm sure you have some scenarios. I know you had a scenario on a bus. I think some people enjoyed the power gave them people of pushing the masks in supermarket shops. I remember going into Tesco's in Castlepollard, and there was a lady in her 60s, and I just went in, and all I was doing was I got a basket, and I was just getting nappies, milk, bread. I was going to be in there, in and out, no less than 3-4 minutes. And she saw me, and she jumped, and she just started walking, chasing after me in the shop and telling me I need to have a mask on. And I was just like, again, I was always polite. I'd be always polite. I'd be like shrugging my shoulders. As she was talking to me, I would put stuff in my basket. It was like a Benny Hill sketch. I just kept moving, and she was just running after me in the shop. And she said, I'll get the manager. And I said, oh, that's fine, that's fine. She went to get the manager. By the time she came out with the manager, I was at the counter putting my stuff in my bag. And I thought afterwards, and I looked at her, and I just thought to myself, you're enjoying this, aren't you? Because if you're really scared of the virus, you wouldn't be going near me. And that was the worrying thing, that people reveal themselves. Yeah. Thomas Sheridan said it was a wonderful education. We saw traits in people who we just thought that we just quietly worked in a shop, and their inner Nazi came out. It was like giving purpose in life to exert control and power over people. And it was disgusting, really.
Yeah, that's right. Just on that, before I ask you about some more questions about Spain, Paul. It really did. And that's the opportunity we have now, isn't it? Is to the last 2 to 3 years to harness the benefit of that education, because I think it's really shifted wholesale a lot of our perspectives on how we view society, how we view the people within it, how we view a lot of those close to us as well. It's been eye-opening actually to see, as well as the general public, to see in the kind of like inner circles, really, just how people have responded to the tyranny, that's become entrenched in the last couple of years. But power is a far bigger aphrodisiac than money. It really is. It's the ultimate aphrodisiac, power. And I guess, probably it's an aphrodisiac for every single person, if we're being honest, if we really, 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 is anybody immune to to the want for power? Probably not. No, but it's being aware of it, really, isn't it? And then the people revealed themselves to be consumed by that need for power. That was, that a lot of people were given, albeit only in small doses, and how so many of them really abused it in the most horrific
People
ways.
should know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we've talked about all this before. I mean,
Yeah.
but I was going to ask you, Paul, about. I think you mentioned at the start how being in Spain, and it's. Am I right in saying? Would you agree? It's still. I think it's very much more defensive of its culture and its customs, Spain, um, than other countries. I could name my own country. There, I think it has less of an insurgent, destructive element within it in its media, albeit it's still there in its media and public life than there is in my own country, for example. I think it's still got its attachments to those old traditions of religion and family in particular. I just wanted to ask, in what ways is it similar to what Ireland was?
Yeah.
Maybe only 20 to 25 years ago, a generation ago, that you remember. In what ways is it still similar now? So maybe the more positive aspects of
Yeah.
Spanish life, really.
Being in Spain, like you lived in Spain, I know I'm in Spain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The culture is there. Being in Malaga yesterday, aside from the beautiful avenues and palm trees, you wonder. Myself and the kids, we love wandering via buggy down little side streets and going off the beaten track. And you see the Spaniards and they're out and they're having lunch or dinner and they're drinking wine, and it's very family orientated. You see a lot of families sitting out. And then you meander a bit more and you come across loads of beautiful little churches, and you wander into the church and there's a lot of people in there just kneeling down saying a prayer. All these little, it's very subtle, and we're noticing that. But it's definitely more family orientated. Even on the trains, anytime. I was just saying to you, maybe my kids are cute, especially just Molly. But anytime they see a child, or children, they come over and they'll, play with the child, the older people and the younger people, and I love that. And I don't see that in Ireland as much. And maybe we're so fixed on our phones and so wrapped up in ourselves. And I just think maybe the older generation, definitely, they seem to love children. And maybe there's certain nationalities in the world that are like that. They're very touchy-feely with kids, like the French, the Italians, the Spaniards. Maybe we're less so. And that's kind of one thing I noticed. But yeah, the traditions are still here by the looks of them. They still seem to have strong faith. I'm sure the woke crowd, and we talked about the Franco war. It was the communists and the fascists, the left and the right, if you go that way. I'm sure they're alive and well. In actual fact, the most lefty, and I could be wrong here, I'm sure some will correct me, the most lefty part of Spain, which is technically not Spain, is Catalonia. They want their independence, don't they? But they're as lefty as you get. They're as lefty as you can go. So there's something in that. But yeah, no, we're enjoying our time here. We're only here for a week, but I've been to Spain a few times as well. What I don't like about Spain, and I'm just going to veer off football here. They do love a dive, don't they?
They love what?
They love a dive. They're always diving, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
And all the
Yeah.
How was your experience? You lived in Seville, Dave. Was it Seville?
Yeah, Seville. I was there. I was only there for 3 months, September to December 2005. And now when I think back to that, I was 23. So that was what, 18 years ago. The world was a completely different place. That was just before social media became popular. So you didn't really have Facebook, Twitter, and all that. So that was it. The world before social media was such a different place. It was, even though it was mid 2000s and it was only 18 years ago, it just seemed to be a bit more of an innocent time. I mean, it probably wasn't. We were. I think society was already on its downward trajectory. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. What I'm saying though was, it seems so long ago now. It seems like a lifetime ago, but I remember it very, very clearly as well. And yeah, I was there on a European exchange, and it was 3 months in Spain. I did 3 or 4 weeks learning Spanish in the classroom, and then I worked in an Irish bar for the rest of the time I was there actually. But it wasn't an Irish bar in a tourist hotspot. It was an Irish bar in a inner city suburb of Seville where there was just only the locals would go. So there was only Spanish people there. And I always remember that someone said to me early on in Seville, they said the accent here is very, very difficult to pick up. Very different to somewhere like Madrid where they speak like classical Spanish. They don't pronounce the S's. So, people had come into the pub and said they'd ordered 2 Coca-Colas. So it wouldn't be dos Coca-Colas. They'd say dos Coca-Cola. That quick, speak really, really quickly. So I equated, so I started to equate an Englishman's attempts to learn Spain and Seville with a Spanish, with a Spanish person coming to Liverpool to learn English. So, and I always remember a few years later being in Barcelona speaking. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I can speak a little bit. And this person, this girl, I think I was trying to pull some girl in a nightclub anyway, and she said, "You speak Spanish with a Seville accent," and I thought, well, that was interesting. But why do I love Spain and particularly Andalusia? Well, Andalusia is classic Spain. It really is, steeped in history. There's a lot of Moorish architecture and Moorish influence in the food, and obviously the Christianity is very, very embedded within the culture. Also, very, very interesting history, amazing architecture. You have the Alhambra in Granada, you have the Mezquita in Cordoba, and you have the Alcazar in Seville. You have that triumvirate of cities. Granada, we call it Granada. The Spanish call it Granada. Seville and Cordoba, all within probably 100 miles of each other, and all very, very old, ancient cities, very, very traditional, very, very protective of their heritage, rich in culture. I love the culture in Spain. I love the way of life. I particularly adore the food. I love the food. Such rich, earthy, very simple food, but amazing ingredients, like deep flavor. I used to love the tapas. They're big into the football there as well, which was also good. I'd say what the women aren't half bad as well in Spain, Paul. The senoritas are decent as well. Yeah. Everything about it. Obviously the weather. But I'll tell you what was true, what I found to be true was that old saying, only a mad dog and an Englishman will goes out in the midday sun in Spain. It's true, and I know it's true because I was that mad Englishman out. I remember being in Seville in August. It was mid-August. It was over 40 degrees, and it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of the siesta. And I was just walking around the streets, and there was hardly a swigging from a bottle of water. I was sweating buckets, sweating like a pig. And I just remember thinking at the time, well, it's true that only Mad Dog and Englishmen go out in the midday sun because I'm him, So the siesta was still very much a thing back then. I think it still is. I love Spain. I do love it.
There is a slower pace of life, and you've definitely. I mean, if the Spanish Tourist Board don't give us a free holiday after these compliments, when can we go?
If there's anyone watching,
it's only the Spanish Tourist Board. And look, I'm in here on holiday, so I can't because I haven't lived here, and my knowledge of Spain is very limited. But I did just little observational things I've noticed, just being around here in Malaga and around Fungirola, Benedictine, all that part. And we're going to Mijas actually tomorrow up in the hills. It's supposed to be a beautiful little Spanish village. Mijas.
Yeah, I've been. It is. It's lovely.
And what I've noticed is there's loads. Now, obviously, it does help with the wonderful weather all year round. But one thing I've noticed compared to Ireland, big difference. There's loads of green areas. There's loads of beautiful parks. There's parks for old people. You can see old people playing bowls and they're just watching the world go by. There's loads of, as I said, green areas, parks, outdoor playgrounds. And the playgrounds, you can see the council or the local government have pumped loads of money into these. It's like a outdoor play centre. And I was thinking to myself, like, compared to Ireland, we which was a bullshit. It was a false economy. The roaring Celtic tiger, where we had a bit of money in the country, and it actually was the worst thing that ever happened in this country. You know, in the early 2000s, and it was boom and bust. But we had a bit of money in our pocket. What I mean is the government. And what Ireland did was, rather than pumping that money into creating parks and maybe building museums and maybe pumping into the health service, building hospitals, or creating playgrounds and all that, what we did was we built shopping centres. We built apartments, and that kind of sums it up. That was when I knew kind of Ireland was changing. You know, give us a bit of money, you know, and we just went crazy. But we went on the loose rather than, as I said, think of children and families and create green areas and parks. No, I don't think there was even one park built during the Celtic Tiger, but there was plenty of shopping centres, and that kind of, there's a huge comparison I've noticed. There's so many green areas here, you know, which is wonderful to see, and kids are having a great time, and it's free as well.
Brilliant, Paul. And something else I was going to ask you. The part of Spain you're in is, to my mind, very fiercely patriotic. Andalusia. I always remember there'd be a proliferation of Spanish flags everywhere you went. They weren't ashamed to display their patriotism, and you know, I am firmly of the belief as well that certain values that hold the fabric of a country together more tightly, even though pretty much every country in Europe is under attack. I think some countries are under attack, you know, a psychological and societal attack more than others. For example, Ireland and the UK. When I think of Spain, I think of a few things. I think of religion. I think of patriotism, family, and food, and those four elements of a culture, if they can be protected, you will maintain the integrity of that country to a degree. And I was just wondering, do you see a lot of are you seeing a lot of Spanish flags, or has that maybe changed, or and how does that compare to Ireland?
Mentioned
back home,
the importance of family. You can clearly see it's important here. Family has been the very fabric of what a family means, and family really is keeps a society together. It's the cohesion of society, isn't it? The family network. And the family network has been chipped away at in Ireland via the marriage referendum, via abortion. So the idea of the traditional family in Ireland is long gone, you know. And even like I've got 4 kids, and people nearly look twice at us in Ireland. So now you're crazy having 4 kids, and we're actually having another one, so it'll be 5. I'm getting a 5-side team, and myself and Lisa are like, well, we love kids, and we love the idea of having a beautiful family, and look, the kids are all healthy. But it's nearly the look at you, and the nearly thing is, can you afford it? You know, and it's I'm thinking previous Irish generations, you know, the idea of the large Irish family. There was 8, 9, 10, and they were always well. People were clothed and fed, and there was no problems there. Now, you know, if someone has 1 or 2 children, you know, that's nearly it. And it's very interesting, the idea of families now in Ireland. It's the large family is nearly frowned upon. You know, it's nearly someone that throws in a little passive remark. So that's the idea of family. And then you mentioned the idea of nationalism. You know, where nationalism now is nearly a dirty word now. To say you're proud to be Irish is nearly, you nearly have to say it in hush circles now. And that's similar to England. You know, England. I was looking at the St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is not too far away now. And St. Patrick's Day now, I think they showed the opening, what will be the theme. And the theme this year, as expected, is diversity and inclusivity. And there's a picture of a drag queen. There's a few colored people in it, and you're just thinking, you know, this is it's just not right anymore. You know, the idea of Irishness is something to be laughed at and poked at. You know, so the idea of the family's been chipped away, nationalism is being chipped away. Is definitely unfortunate. And I'm sure you're seeing it in your country as well, Dave.
Yeah, and I've remarked to you quite a lot as well about when I think of Ireland, and I think of those these really vivid images of beautiful countryside and like myth and folklore and amazing pubs and and amazing stories that knit together the land and the people and pubs and a pint of Guinness and good chat and these and good food as well and I think of, as you say, the traditional family unit when I think of Ireland, and I think of the church. So what I'm saying is, how, how tragic that what's being done to Ireland and to my country in a similar way, but not quite as bad yet. But how tragic that such an amazing society and with amazing cultures and customs and traditions has been attacked to such a degree where that very essence of Ireland and all those things that I've just talked about there that I think are absolutely wonderful, that they're seen as nothing more than something to be sneered at by the dark forces that seem to have taken over, public institutions and invaded the minds of many people as well. How sad that is, because what an incredible country Ireland is, and
the thing, like, we were once called the island of saints and scholars,
yeah,
and there
well,
was
that sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah,
holy men and women, and obviously,
yeah.
like, the week that's in it is the feast day of St. Bridget, and people make St. Bridget cross, and yeah, and then of scholars, we've wonderful writers and poets, but now, yeah, that sense of Irishness, it's nearly confined to the history books now. They're trying to reinvent what it means to be Irish now, these cultural marxes, which is, but we'll let them, we'll see how far they get with that.
Yeah, well, they're starting to eat themselves alive, Paul. We've talked about this,
Yeah,
haven't we, as well? And I do think we've reached the high water mark now. We have, which isn't to say that things aren't going to be very difficult, and it'll take, I don't know, it'll take a generation or two to undo the damage. But I do think we've reached peak insanity in my own country as well. I always think that of all the countries in the world, that has the greatest kind of self-sabotaging traitors within the establishment, within the media, within public life. I do think it's England, the UK, but particularly England. I think they have absolutely tried to smash my country to bits. We saw that with the reaction to the Brexit vote, which really showed that. But
yeah,
there, there's a spirit, though. There's a spirit in my country that refuses to bow down. There's a spirit in your country, and people are really they, they've had enough. They really have had enough, and deep down there is that will and that want. It's deep in our DNA. That connection to the previous generations who espoused all these wonderful values. That connection to our culture, our history. That need to protect what is precious is there in enough of us to really push back this tide of evil woke insanity. I really do believe that.
never forget. And actually, just what we're talking about, I don't know how many minutes we've left.
Four minutes.
4 minutes, but there's actually an Irish connection to the Spanish Civil War. There was actually an Irish brigade fighting with Franco, and
right.
there was Irish that fought on both sides, on the Republican, on the communist side, and also the fascist side. But and then there was a wonderful book, I think it was called "Even the Olives Are Bleeding," and it was about an Irishman fighting in the Spanish Civil War. But the party that's in power now, Leo Varadkar's party, Fine Gael, it was them under the leadership of a guy called Ona Duffy, and they were called the Blue Shirts, that fought with Franco. So when people see Fine Gaelers, you always remind them of their history and their links with Franco. You call them blue shirt bastards. And I remember as a child being in Mullingar at it must be some demonstration. I was only maybe 9 or 10, and there were two owl lads, and there must have been a few Fine Gaelers speaking on the podium. And I remember these two owl fellas going, "Blue shirt bastards." And I remember saying to my father, "What was that all about?" He said, "Oh, it's actually lads went out to fight in the Spanish Civil War with the fascists." And he said, "Always remind them that."
Yeah.
So again, maybe with recent times, with the COVID situation and the destruction of our cultures, we will never forget and never forgive these people, because it will turn around. The pendulum will swing back to us, because again, we value the importance of family, and we value the importance of our culture, our national identity. You know.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, I think the pendulum's already swinging back, and as well as that, we are moving away from that world of consumerism and materialism, comfort, ease, and convenience to and away from globalism to a more locally interconnected world based on return to some more traditional values of family and community. I just think that it's starting to happen, Paul. And I've mentioned before about, I think there's been a, what I call it, a moral and intellectual counter revolution has been bubbling away under the surface for quite a number of years now. Really has. I mean, look at our podcast. Look at this. Is this something? This is something that's been born out of the insanity. We met each other because of the situation that the world found, and it spawned this podcast. I'm not saying that we're two intellectuals, and I'm not saying that we're perfectly morally grounded. I'm just saying that there's a lot of people now who realise the importance of keeping alive values, important values that a society needs in order to be able to not implode completely, which ours is threatened to do, but B, to continue to regenerate. And I do think there's a renaissance around the corner. I do. We've got 1 minute to go, Paul. I'll leave you to have the final thought.
I'll just say something.
Pressure's on.
Thanks. I'll just say something that my little boy Dylan said, and kids have a wonderful innocence of the world. I just said, Dylan, are you enjoying your holiday? This is as we were going around Malaga on the open top bus, the hop on, hop off bus. And he just said, Daddy, I'm living my best life. And I just thought,
I love it.
That's it. I love, when I heard that, me and Lisa just smiled. And we said, we need to learn from kids, don't we?
And that's a perfect way to end this podcast. Dylan's living his best life. That's a great way to go on this podcast. Nice one, Dylan. That's amazing. That tell him that from me. I love that. Right, Paul. I will see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. And for everyone who's watched or listened to the podcast, let us know in the comments any thoughts, and we'll see you soon. Cheers, Paul.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye.